want to find this guy. This is a dangerous individual who has committed an absolutely heinous crime against this community and these victims. We've got air assets.
In the heart of Montana's remote wilderness lies a town where everyone knows your name, and no one locks their doors. But on August 2nd, 2025, one man shattered that peace with 4 bullets. A massacre in broad daylight. A killer who vanished without a trace. And a town now haunted by a single question. Where is Michael Paul Brown? Nestled in the majestic wilderness of western Montana lies the town of Anaconda, a community of just over 9,000 people. It's a place where everyone knows your name, where neighbors lend a hand without asking, and where people still leave their doors unlocked. Visuals shift to old photos of the town's copper mining history, quiet bars, and elderly residents waving at each other. This town wears its history with pride, once a booming copper town, now a peaceful retirement hub for veterans, families, and folks seeking solitude. But on the morning of August 2nd, 2025, that peace shattered. At exactly 10:30 a.m., inside a small neighborhood pub called the Owl Bar, just across from the local VFW post, a man entered without saying a word. He wasn't a stranger. He was Michael Paul Brown, 45 years old. A U.S. Army and Montana National Guard veteran. A man battling severe PTSD. And someone known by nearly everyone in town. Visuals, inside the Owl Bar. A tight, rustic interior. Wood-paneled walls. Old bar stools. Local photographs. Glasses still half full on tables. Without warning, Brown pulled out a firearm. And opened fire. Within seconds, 4 people lay dying on the floor. Visuals, police tape across the bar. An officer shielding their face. Locals crying outside. 4 members of the Anaconda community, gunned down in broad daylight. In the very place they went to feel safe. But this wasn't just a mass shooting. This was targeted. These weren't random victims. They were people Michael Brown knew. People who had once shared drinks, conversations, and memories with him. This individual knew all 4 of the victims. This wasn't a random act of violence. And then, as quickly as it began, it ended. Brown fled the bar. He ran home next door, removed his clothes, and vanished wearing only his underwear. No shoes. No shirt. No phone. Just a half-naked man, melting into the wild. And disappearing into the Montana wilderness. The shock that hit Anaconda on August 2nd wasn't just from the violence. It was from the names. Because the victims weren't strangers. They were part of the town's heartbeat. Nancy Loretta Kelly, age 64. A gentle, warm-hearted woman who had just retired after 30 years as an oncology nurse. She'd spent a lifetime holding the hands of patients during the hardest days of their lives. After retirement, she took up bartending at the Owl Bar, not for the money, but for the companionship. She wanted to keep busy, to stay connected. That bar, those people, it became her second home. She was behind the bar when the bullets started flying. Daniel Edwin Bailey, age 59. A man with a calm demeanor and a quick wit. Friends say he could always sense when someone needed cheering up. He was a bar regular, not rowdy, not loud. Just, present. He had gone to Owl Bar that morning for his usual drink. He never made it home. Narrator. David Allen Leach, age 70. David was deaf and lived in a local public housing complex for seniors and people with disabilities. He was known for always offering to help, whether it was moving furniture or running errands for neighbors. Quote from neighbor Robert Wyatt appears on screen. If you needed help, Dave would help. But that morning, even with all his kindness and quiet strength, he had no chance. Tony Wayne Palm, age 74. A storyteller. A Marine Corps veteran. Tony was known for nursing a beer and spinning tales, sometimes exaggerated, always entertaining. He was a fixture at Owl Bar. One of those familiar faces who made the bar feel like family. 4 people. 4 different lives. All tied together by a single place, and by a man they all knew. Because Michael Brown wasn't just some distant gunman. He was part of their world. A regular at the bar. A neighbor. A man they'd shared stories with. And according to Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen, that's what makes this massacre even more chilling. We believe he knew all 4 victims personally. These were targeted killings. The Owl Bar wasn't just a crime scene. It became a graveyard of memories, soaked in grief. And now, Anaconda is left asking, why? Michael Paul Brown. Age 45. Born and raised in Montana. A familiar face in Anaconda. And, tragically, a regular at the Owl Bar. Michael was a U.S. Army veteran. Deployed once to Iraq in the early 2000s. Like many returning soldiers, he came back with demons. Struggles with mental health. Alcohol. Isolation. But in Anaconda, he wasn't treated like a threat. He was just Mike, the quiet guy who drank whiskey, tipped well, and kept mostly to himself. He lived in a small, modest house right next door to the Owl Bar. So when gunfire erupted that morning, the suspect didn't need to flee far. According to investigators, after pulling the trigger, Brown walked calmly out of the bar, entered his home, and within minutes, stripped off his clothes. Then, with only his boxer shorts on, he ran. The surveillance footage is surreal. 10:33 a.m. Brown is seen half-naked, barefoot, running from the scene. He didn't take a car. He didn't pack a bag. He vanished, into the Montana wilderness. This isn't suburban sprawl. It's raw, unfiltered wilderness. Mountains that stretch for miles. Trails known only to locals. And for someone like Michael Brown, who grew up here, it could become the perfect place to hide. He knew that terrain. He knew where to go. He had a head start, and he was dangerous. Montana State Trooper. Law enforcement launched an immediate manhunt. Multiple agencies were called in. SWAT teams. Drones. Thermal imaging. K-9 units. But Brown had already melted into the trees. With no phone. No known supplies. No confirmed destination. The people of Anaconda were left paralyzed. A killer was loose. And he could be anywhere. In just a matter of minutes. Michael Brown had gone from neighbor, to fugitive. From veteran, to suspect in a quadruple homicide. And the question echoing through the streets of this once peaceful town was chilling. What triggered this? And where did he go? After disappearing in boxer shorts, Michael Brown somehow found a way to survive. Authorities believe he stole a vehicle from a nearby rural driveway. Not just any car, but one loaded with camping gear, survival supplies, and fresh clothing. With that car, Brown didn't just escape. He leveled up. He now had everything he needed to disappear, deeper into the wild. The search zone quickly shifted to the backcountry near Barker Lake and Stumptown Road. A region known for its dense forests, steep ridges, and zero cell service. Over the next 4 days, more than 250 law enforcement officers were deployed. Search dogs, infrared drones, helicopters equipped with thermal imaging. All scouring the unforgiving terrain. They found the stolen vehicle, tucked into a tree line. Camping gear was missing. Footprints disappeared into the underbrush. But Brown himself? Gone. We believe Brown is still in the area. He is armed. He is clothed. And he is extremely dangerous. Forensic teams found signs of recent fire pits. Some believe Brown may have been watching the search teams. Just steps away. "We've got kids here. We don't know where he is. He could be anywhere in these woods." Anaconda, once a town where doors were left unlocked, was now a town in lockdown mode. Residents were told to stay inside. Hikers were warned to avoid the trails. Every rustle in the woods, every snapped twig, felt like a threat. But the clock was ticking. Food, water, and weather could shift everything. The question haunting every searcher: was Brown still alive? And if so, what was he planning next? Before he became the most wanted man in Montana, Michael Paul Brown was known as a quiet, brooding presence around Anaconda. But those who knew him, knew he had demons. Brown, now 45, is an Army veteran. He served overseas in the early 2000s. But details about his deployment remain vague. Some friends say he came back different. Withdrawn. Easily agitated. Others hint at untreated PTSD. He used to sit at the corner of the Owl Bar, just drinking. You'd say the wrong thing, and he'd go stone cold. Like a switch flipped. Records show a history of violent behavior. In 2011, Brown was arrested for assaulting a neighbor during a property dispute. In 2015, a restraining order was filed against him by a former girlfriend. He violated it twice, but never served jail time. Authorities now admit there were warning signs, but no one expected a mass shooting. He was a powder keg. He lived on the edge of society, isolated, unstable, possibly paranoid. And when you combine military trauma, alcohol, and isolation, the outcome can be explosive. What makes this case so chilling isn't just that Brown knew his victims. It's that he likely sat beside them, laughed with them. For years. They were his people. And one August morning, he turned on them in an instant. So why did he snap? And could someone have stopped it? The small community of Anaconda is struggling to come to terms with the unthinkable. What was once a peaceful, close-knit town, where neighbors knew each other by name and doors were left unlocked, now lives under the shadow of fear. I remember getting a text message from a friend about the shooting. I called my mom, but there was no answer. I drove straight to Anaconda, and found out she was one of the victims. Nancy Kelly was more than a bartender. She was a mother, a caregiver, a pillar of this community. Christian speaks with heartbreak about the realities of mental health care in rural areas. We didn't even lock our cars or our homes, but when people don't get the mental health care they need, this is what happens. The threat is not over. Authorities warn that Michael Brown remains armed and dangerous, and they fear he may try to return. In response, law enforcement agencies have ramped up patrols and tightened security, determined to keep this community safe. In a town where life once moved slowly, the scars of this massacre will linger for years to come. And for Anaconda, nothing will ever be quite the same again. As of today, Michael Paul Brown remains at large. The U.S. Marshals Service is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. The public is urged to stay vigilant. To call 1-877-926-8332 if they have any information. Law enforcement is shifting its strategy. This is no longer just a search. It's a fugitive pursuit. Brown may be armed. He may be hiding. But he will be found.